The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber filled with soft blue light as 12 different alien species gathered for an emergency meeting. Ambassador of the collective stood at the center podium, his tall, thin frame casting long shadows across the floor. His large black eyes scanned the assembled delegates as silence fell over the chamber. "Fellow council members," began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's perfect acoustics, "we face a situation that requires immediate attention. Our long-range scouts have discovered a new species." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. New species were rare discoveries in their well-mapped section of the galaxy. Most of the intelligent life forms had been centuries ago when the Council first formed. "These beings call themselves humans," continued. "They come from a small blue planet in what they call the Milky Way galaxy. Our initial scans show they have developed faster-than-light travel and have already colonized several star systems." Doctor, the Council's chief, raised one of her 4 arms. Her insect-like features clicked as she spoke. "What is their technological level, Ambassador? Are they suitable for peaceful contact?" Activated a holographic display that showed grainy images of human spacecraft. The ships looked rough and angular, nothing like the smooth, elegant vessels the Council species used. "Their technology appears primitive but functional. Their ships are crude but effective. They seem to solve problems through what our analysts call brute force methods rather than elegant solutions." The delegate from the Peaceful Empire, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish, pulsed with different colors as it communicated. "Have they shown signs of aggression toward other species?" "Unknown," replied. "They have had no contact with any Council species yet. However, their expansion pattern suggests they are not particularly careful about territorial boundaries. They seem to claim any system they can reach, regardless of prior claims." This caused more murmuring among the delegates. The Council had operated for over 3,000 years on the principle of careful, planned expansion. Every new colony required extensive environmental studies and approval from neighboring species. Admiral of the Draconian Defense Fleet, one of the few military representatives on the Council, leaned forward. His reptilian features showed concern. "What about their military capabilities?" His expression grew thoughtful. "This is where things become interesting. Their ships appear to be heavily armed but with kinetic weapons mostly. Rail guns, missile systems, and some energy weapons. Very primitive compared to our quantum disruptors and neural pacifiers." Doctor clicked her mandibles in what passed for laughter among her species. "Kinetic weapons. Do they still throw rocks at each other too?" Several delegates made sounds of amusement. The Council had moved beyond such crude weapons centuries ago. Their advanced civilizations had developed non-lethal methods of conflict resolution. Wars were fought with economic sanctions and diplomatic pressure, not explosive devices. "The interesting part," continued, "is that all their ships appear to be armed. Even their exploration and colony vessels carry significant defensive capabilities. This suggests either a very dangerous home galaxy or a naturally aggressive species." The Council's military doctrine had not faced a serious challenge in over a millennium. The 12 species had learned to resolve conflicts through negotiation and compromise. Their patrol ships carried only non-lethal suppression technology, designed to disable rather than destroy. "I recommend we initiate first contact protocols," said Delegate from the Republic, her blue-skinned features calm and confident. "These humans may simply be scared and defensive because they are alone. Once they learn about the Council and our peaceful ways, they will surely want to join our confederation." Several other delegates nodded in agreement. This had been the standard approach for centuries. Species that were initially aggressive often became peaceful once they understood the benefits of cooperation and the futility of violence against superior technology. Admiral looked less certain. "Perhaps we should observe them longer before making contact. Learn more about their intentions and capabilities. Admiral said with gentle reproach, "We have observed them for 6 months. They have made no aggressive moves toward any Council territory. Their communications show they are seeking peaceful exploration and colonization. Fear and caution have their place, but so does wisdom and compassion." Doctor accessed her data pad and began reading. "According to our analysis, humans solve most problems through direct action rather than careful planning. Their technology is inefficient but robust. They prefer redundant systems over elegant designs. This suggests a species that has faced many challenges but lacks the sophistication to solve them efficiently." "In other words," added Delegate "they are exactly the type of species the Council was created to help. We can guide them toward more civilized methods of existence." The chamber fell quiet as the delegates considered this. The Galactic Council had always prided itself on being a force for peace and progress. They had successfully integrated 7 different species over the centuries, each time helping a younger civilization move beyond its primitive instincts. "I propose we dispatch a diplomatic vessel to make first contact," announced. "The Harmony's voices our most advanced diplomatic ship. Its crew specializes in first contact protocols and has successfully established relations with 4 previous species." Admiral shifted uneasily in his chair. "I still recommend caution. Unknown species can be unpredictable." "Admiral," said Doctor, "look at their technology. Their most advanced ships are barely capable of 1/10 light speed. Their weapons are crude kinetic systems that we could neutralize with our standard deflector shields. What possible threat could they pose to a Council diplomatic vessel?" The vote was called. 10 of the 12 delegates voted to authorize first contact. Only Admiral and 1 other delegate voted for continued observation. The decision was made. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, remained behind, studying the holographic images of human ships. Something about them nagged at his mind, but he could not identify what bothered him. The ships were ugly, inefficient, and primitive, yet they had achieved interstellar travel and had spread across multiple star systems in a remarkably short time. He dismissed the feeling. The Council had handled first contact situations dozens of times. They had never encountered a species they could not eventually guide toward civilization and peace. Humans would be no different. Within a few years, they would likely become the 13th member of the Galactic Council, grateful for the guidance and protection of their more advanced neighbors. Deactivated the display and walked toward the exit, already planning the diplomatic mission that would introduce humanity to galactic civilization. Captain Sarah stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the 442 system grow larger on the main screen. The colony ship had been traveling for 8 months, carrying 15,000 colonists and everything they needed to start a new world. But right now, was more concerned about the damage report scrolling across her personal tablet. "How bad is it, Martinez?" she asked her chief engineer, who was crawling out from under a damaged console. Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez wiped grease from his hands and shook his head. "The hull breach in Section 7 is sealed, but we lost 2 of the secondary power conduits. The good news is the main systems are all functional. The bad news is we're running at about 70% efficiency." Nodded grimly. 3 days ago, they had encountered something that changed everything. An alien probe had appeared from nowhere, immediately beginning intensive scans of their ship. When had politely asked it to stop, the probe had responded by attempting to force its way through their computer systems with some kind of quantum intrusion technology. The New Horizon was technically a colony ship, but like all human vessels venturing into unknown space, it had been equipped with defensive systems. When the probe refused to stop its invasive scanning and began charging what appeared to be a weapon, had made the decision to defend her ship and the sleeping colonists. The probe had been destroyed, but not before it transmitted their location somewhere into deep space. "Captain," called Lieutenant Park from the communications station. "We're receiving a response to our message to Earth." Walked over to the communications console. 3 days ago, immediately after the probe incident, she had sent an emergency message back to Earth through the quantum communication array. The message had been simple: possible hostile contact, requesting military support. "Put it on screen, Lieutenant." The face of Admiral Jackson appeared on the main display. His weathered features looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "Captain, we received your message. I want you to know that Protocol 7 has been activated." Felt her stomach tighten. Protocol 7 meant the military was taking the situation seriously, very seriously. "The UES Retribution launched 6 hours after we received your transmission," Admiral Jackson continued. "They should reach your position in approximately 12 days. Until then, you are to proceed with your colonization mission but maintain full defensive readiness." The message ended and stared at the blank screen for a moment. The Retribution was the ship in the Colonial Defense Force, humanity's first true deep space battleship. If Earth was sending the Retribution, it meant they considered this a potential military situation. Martinez said, turning to her engineer, "I want you to run a full diagnostic on all defensive systems. Everything. Shields, weapons, point defense, the works." "Captain," said Dr. Sarah, the mission's chief scientist, who had been listening from her station, "do you really think that's necessary? The probe might have just been a scientific instrument from some curious alien species." Looked at the scientist with the patient expression she reserved for civilians who didn't understand military thinking. "Doctor, that probe attempted to break into our computer systems. When we asked it to stop, it started charging what our sensors identified as an energy weapon. That's not scientific curiosity. That's either aggression or a complete disregard for our rights as a sovereign species." Commander James Wright, the ship's first officer and former military, nodded in agreement. "The captain's right. We have to assume the worst-case scenario until we know otherwise." Doctor looked uncomfortable. "But surely if there are other intelligent species out there, they must be peaceful. Any civilization advanced enough for interstellar travel would have moved beyond warfare, right?" And Wright exchanged glances. This was a common belief among civilians, but military personnel knew better. "Doctor," said gently, "human civilization is advanced enough for interstellar travel, and we definitely haven't moved beyond warfare. Why would we assume aliens are more peaceful than we are?" The bridge fell silent as the crew considered this. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago, and they had done it while still fighting wars on Earth. The Colonial Defense Force existed precisely because military planners assumed that any species they encountered in space might be hostile. "Captain," Lieutenant Park called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the colony site. The advance team has established the initial settlement and reports no problems." Nodded. The advance team had landed on 442B 2 weeks ago to begin setting up the basic infrastructure for the colony. Everything had been proceeding normally until the probe incident. "What's our current defensive status?" asked Wright. Wright consulted his tablet. "All point defense systems are operational. Rail gun batteries are loaded and ready. Shield generators are at full power. We're running passive scans only to avoid attracting attention, but our early warning systems are active." The New Horizon might have been designed as a colony ship, but human engineering philosophy demanded that every vessel capable of deep space travel be able to defend itself. The ship carried enough firepower to destroy anything smaller than a heavy cruiser, and its shields could withstand significant punishment. "Captain," Doctor said hesitantly, "I've been thinking about the probe. What if it wasn't trying to attack us? What if it was just trying to communicate and we misunderstood?" Sighed. She had been asking herself the same question for 3 days. "Doctor, our universal translation protocols were active. If it had wanted to communicate, There were a dozen ways it could have done so without forcing its way into our computers. And when we broadcast a clear stop message in 17 different mathematical languages, it ignored us and began charging its weapon systems. Wright added, "Doctor, in military terms, what the probe did was the equivalent of pointing a gun at someone and demanding they put their hands up. Even if that wasn't the intention, it's how any reasonable person would interpret those actions." The scientist looked troubled. "So what happens now?" Looked out at the stars ahead of them. Somewhere out there was an unknown alien civilization that had just discovered humanity existed. Whether they were hostile, curious, or something else entirely remained to be seen. "Now we do what humans do best," said. "We hope for the best and prepare for the worst. We'll continue with the colonization mission, but we'll be ready for anything. And in 12 days, the retribution will arrive to make sure we have options if diplomacy doesn't work." The bridge crew returned to their duties, each thinking about what the future might hold. None of them knew that their simple act of self-defense against an invasive probe had just set in motion a chain of events that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. In 12 days, the retribution would arrive, and with it, the galaxy would see something it had never seen before, a human warship designed specifically to fight enemies more advanced than humanity itself. The diplomatic vessel Harmony's voice dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the 442 system. "Captain, a graceful being from the aquatic Nereid species, immediately ordered his crew to begin broadcasting the universal greeting protocol on all frequencies. Broadcasting peace messages in 17 languages," reported Communications Officer Oss, his tentacles dancing across the control interface, "including mathematical sequences and pictographic representations of peaceful intent." Ambassador stood on the bridge, his tall frame bent slightly forward as he studied the tactical display. The human colony ship New Horizon appeared as a blip of light near the fourth planet, exactly where their long-range scans had predicted it would be. "Ship analysis, please," requested. Science officer activated the scanning array, her multiple eyes focusing on different displays simultaneously. Length approximately 800 meters, mass roughly 2 million tons. The design is unusual, Ambassador. "Unusual how?" Mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "The ship appears to be built in sections, with heavy reinforcement between each section. Multiple redundant systems are visible. Power output is much higher than necessary for a ship of its size and purpose." Nodded. This matched their previous observations. Humans seem to everything, wasting energy and materials on backup systems that elegant design would make unnecessary. "They're responding to our greeting," Oss announced. "Audio and visual transmission coming through." The main screen activated, showing the bridge of the human ship. A female human in a dark blue uniform appeared, her short brown hair neatly arranged and her expression cautiously friendly. "Greetings," the human said. "I am Captain Sarah of the UES New Horizon. We receive your peaceful intentions and respond in kind. We welcome contact with your civilization." Stepped forward, smiling in what he hoped was a reassuring manner. "Captain, I am Ambassador of the Galactic Council. We represent 12 peaceful species who have worked together for over 3,000 years to maintain harmony in this region of space." Captain's expression remained carefully neutral. "That's impressive, Ambassador. We're honored by your contact. We are representatives of the human species from Earth." "We know," said warmly. "We have been observing your species' remarkable expansion across the stars. We are impressed by your rapid technological development." Something flickered across the human captain's face. "Observing us, for how long?" "Only 6 months," assured her quickly. "Standard first contact protocols require observation before communication. We meant no disrespect." Captain nodded slowly. "I understand. Ambassador, we experienced an incident 3 days ago with what we believe was an alien probe. It scanned our ship extensively and became hostile when we asked it to stop. Do you know anything about this? Felt confusion ripple through his consciousness. A probe. Captain, the Council has not sent any probes to your location. Our observation was conducted entirely from long-range sensors. The human captain's expression grew troubled. Then, there's another species in this area that you don't know about. This was disturbing news. The Council had mapped this entire region centuries ago. The appearance of an unknown species raised questions about their territorial surveys. Captain said, perhaps we should meet in person to discuss this situation. Would you be willing to attend a diplomatic conference in neutral space? I would be honored, Captain replied. However, I must inform you that we have requested support from our government. A military vessel is en route and should arrive within the week. Looked up from her sensors with alarm. Military vessel. Captain, surely that's not necessary. The Council has maintained peace in this region we have no hostile species in our territory. Captain's expression became very serious. Officer, with respect, something destroyed one of your people's probes after it attacked us. Either you have a rogue element in your civilization, or there's another player in this system. Either way, my responsibility is to protect the 15,000 colonists under my care. Felt a chill run through his body. 15,000 beings on a single ship. Human colony efforts were much larger than the Council had estimated. Captain, he said carefully, what type of military vessel are you expecting? A battleship, Captain replied matter-of-factly. The UES Retribution. She's our deep space combat vessel, designed specifically for unknown threat scenarios. The bridge of the Harmony's voice fell silent. A battleship. The Council hadn't built anything that could be called a battleship in over 1,000 years. Their largest military vessels were patrol cruisers designed for law enforcement, not combat. Captain leaned over to whisper urgently to Ambassador, perhaps we should reconsider this meeting until we understand more about human military capabilities. But shook his head. If humans were bringing a warship to what was supposed to be a peaceful first contact, it was even more important to establish dialogue quickly. Captain said, we would still like to meet. Perhaps your military commander would be willing to attend as well when he arrives. She, Captain corrected with a slight smile. Captain Helen commands the Retribution, and yes, I'm sure she would be interested in meeting representatives of the Galactic Council. After the communication ended, the bridge crew of the Harmony's voice gathered around the tactical display to discuss what they had learned. A battleship, repeated, her multiple eyes blinking rapidly. What kind of species builds battleships for first contact situations? Science Officer N, who had been quietly analyzing the human transmission, looked up from his console. I've been studying their ship during our conversation. The energy signatures are concerning. How so? Asked. Their colony ship is carrying weapons that register as military grade by our standards. Kinetic accelerators, high-energy pulse systems, and what appears to be a comprehensive point defense network. Captain's aquatic features rippled with concern. A colony ship with military-grade weapons. More than that, N continued. The power distribution suggests these weapons can all be fired simultaneously without affecting other ship systems. This isn't a colony ship with defensive additions. This is a colony ship built from the ground up to fight while performing its civilian mission. The implications settled over the bridge crew like a heavy blanket. Everything they thought they knew about human civilization was starting to seem incomplete. Ambassador, Captain said quietly, what if we've misjudged this species? What if their primitive technology isn't primitive at all, just different? Stared at the tactical display showing the human colony ship. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, A human battleship was approaching at faster-than-light speed. In a few days, they would meet representatives of a species that sent warships to protect their colonists and called it normal procedure. For the first time since receiving this assignment, Ambassador began to wonder if the Galactic Council was prepared for first contact with humanity. More troubling still, he began to wonder if humanity was prepared for first contact with them. "Continue monitoring their ship," he ordered quietly, "and prepare detailed scans for when their battleship arrives. I have a feeling we're going to need to understand these humans much better than we thought." The space around rippled as something massive dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Doctor was analyzing biological samples in her laboratory aboard the Harmony's Voice when every alarm on the ship began screaming at once. She rushed to the bridge, her 4 arms struggling to keep her balance as the ship shuddered under the gravitational waves created by the newcomer's arrival. The scene that greeted her made her stop dead in her tracks. The main screen showed a ship unlike anything in the Council's databases. The UES Retribution hung in space like a predator made of metal and composites. It was massive, nearly twice the length of the Harmony's Voice, but its size wasn't what made Doctor's breathing spiracles clench with instinctive fear. It was the ship's obvious purpose. "By the 7 moons," Captain whispered, his aquatic features rippling with shock. "What is that thing?" Ambassador stood frozen at the center of the bridge, his large black eyes reflecting the image of the human battleship. "That," he said quietly, "is what humans consider appropriate for a first contact situation." Science officers' multiple eyes were moving independently, each one focused on different aspects of the ship's design. "Ambassador, I'm reading weapon signatures across the entire hull. Multiple kinetic accelerators, missile launch systems, and energy projectors. The armor plating appears to be layered, with what looks like ablative outer sections and dense inner cores." Doctor moved to her analysis station and began running the ship's configuration through the Council's military database. What she found made her mandibles click with nervous energy. "This isn't possible," she muttered, then louder, "Ambassador, this ship doesn't match any known design philosophy in our records." "What do you mean?" asked, finally tearing his gaze away from the screen. Doctor activated a holographic display that showed the Retribution alongside various Council vessels. "Look at the differences. Our ships are designed for efficiency, elegance, and multi-purpose functionality. This human ship appears to be designed for one purpose only: warfare." She highlighted different sections of the human vessel. "See these redundant power conduits? They're built so the ship can continue fighting even with massive damage. These armor sections aren't just thick, they're specifically designed to absorb different types of energy while the ship maintains combat effectiveness." Communications Officer Os looked up from his station. "I'm receiving a transmission from the human vessel." The main screen flickered, and a new human face appeared. This one was older than Captain, with graying hair and cold, calculating eyes that seemed to see everything. "This is Captain Helen of the UES Retribution. I'm requesting a status update on the diplomatic situation and the current threat level." Ambassador stepped forward, trying to project calm confidence. "Captain, I am Ambassador of the Galactic Council. There is no threat. We are conducting peaceful first contact negotiations with Captain." Captain's expression didn't change. "Ambassador, 3 days ago an unknown probe attacked the New Horizon. Until we understand who was responsible and what their intentions are, we consider this a potential combat zone." Doctor felt something cold settle in her stomach. The human used the term combat zone, the way a council diplomat might say discussion area. "Captain," said carefully, "surely your weapons are not necessary for this situation." For the first time, Captain's expression shifted slightly. It might have been surprise or possibly amusement. "Ambassador, every human ship that leaves Earth is prepared for combat. We learned long ago that the universe doesn't care about your intentions. It only cares about your capabilities. Looked up from her sensor readings, her voice tight with something approaching panic. Ambassador, I'm detecting active targeting systems. The human ship is scanning us with what appears to be fire control sensors. Captain's voice remained calm. Standard procedure, Ambassador. We scan everything in our operational area. Your ship registers as unknown configuration, so our computers are calculating engagement options. It's automatic. Felt the blood drain from his face. Engagement options. How we would fight you if we had to, Captain explained as if discussing the weather. Your ship appears to be lightly armed and minimally armored. Our tactical computer estimates we could disable you in approximately 37 seconds if necessary. The bridge of the Harmony's voice fell silent. Doctor realized she was looking at something that challenged everything the Council believed about civilization and progress. Captain, she said, her voice barely steady, may I ask how your species achieved interstellar travel? Captain's image turned to focus on her. We built ships that could survive the journey and fight anything we met on the other side. Same way we've survived everything else. Doctor began pulling up her analysis of human civilization, her mind racing to understand what she was seeing. Your ships aren't primitive at all, are they? They're designed specifically to fight enemies more advanced than yourselves. Every human ship is designed to fight outnumbered and, Captain confirmed. We assume our enemies will be bigger, faster, and more advanced, so we build ships that can take punishment and keep fighting. The implications crashed over Doctor like a tidal wave. The redundant systems, the wasteful power output, the crude-looking armor, none of it was primitive engineering. It was combat engineering by a species that had learned to survive through preparation for the worst possible scenarios. Your civilization, Doctor said slowly, developed space travel as an extension of warfare. Our civilization developed space travel as an extension of survival, Captain corrected. Same thing, really. Ambassador found his voice again. Captain, surely you understand that we come in peace. The Council has maintained harmony for 3,000 years. Captain nodded. I'm sure you have, Ambassador, but you've maintained harmony in your space with species that think like you do. You're about to encounter a species that thinks differently. She leaned back in her chair, and for the first time, Doctor saw something that might have been sympathy in the human's eyes. Ambassador, I've reviewed your first contact protocols. They're very civilized, very reasonable. They assume that all intelligent species will eventually choose peace over conflict because peace is more efficient. That's correct, said, confused by where this was leading. The problem with that logic, Captain said, is that it assumes survival is about efficiency. Humans learned that survival is about preparation for catastrophic failure. We don't plan for things to go well. We plan for everything to go wrong at the worst possible moment. Doctor stared at the tactical display showing the retribution. Every system on that ship was designed around the assumption that they would face superior enemies and had to compensate through superior preparation and determination. Captain, she said quietly, what happens if we can't resolve this peacefully? The human captain's expression became very serious. Doctor, humans have been preparing for that possibility since before we achieved. We really hope it doesn't come to that. As the transmission ended, Doctor looked around the bridge at her fellow council members. They were all staring at the image of the human battleship with expressions of growing comprehension and horror. They had sought to contact a primitive species and offer them guidance toward civilization. Instead, they had found warriors who had achieved civilization through mastery of conflict. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council faced something they had never encountered, a species that was genuinely prepared for war. Doctor sat alone in her laboratory aboard the Harmony's voice, surrounded by holographic displays showing every detail of human ship design that their sensors could detect. For 6 hours, she had been analyzing the retribution, and with each discovery, the implications became more terrifying. She activated her personal communication device and sent an encrypted message directly to the Galactic Council chambers. Within minutes, the 12 council leaders appeared as holographic projections around her lab table. "Fellow council members," she began, her voice tight with strain, "I need to share what we've learned about human civilization. What I'm about to tell you will change everything we thought we knew about intelligence and survival." Ambassador's projection leaned forward. "Doctor, please proceed." She activated the tactical display showing the retribution. "This ship represents something we've never encountered before. It's not just a warship. It's a masterpiece of survival engineering by a species that has perfected the art of fighting superior enemies." Delegate from the Republic interrupted. "Doctor, surely you're exaggerating. Their technology is crude compared to ours." "That's exactly the point," Doctor replied, highlighting different sections of the ship. "Their technology isn't crude. It's specifically designed to function under conditions that would destroy our vessels. Look at these power systems. They can operate at full combat capacity while sustaining massive damage. Our ships shut down non-essential systems when damaged to preserve efficiency. Their ships are designed so that no system is non-essential during combat." She pulled up a comparison between Council vessels and human ships. "We design ships to be elegant and efficient. They design ships to absorb punishment and keep fighting. We assume our technology will work perfectly. They assume everything will break at the worst possible moment." Admiral's projection showed deep concern. "What are you saying, Doctor?" "I'm saying that humans didn't develop space travel despite their capacity for violence. They developed it because of their mastery of violence. Every system on their ships assumes they will face enemies with superior technology and overwhelming numbers." Doctor activated another display showing the New Horizon. "Even their colony ship carries weapons that our military would classify as heavy armament. To them, there's no distinction between civilian and military vessels. Every ship is a potential warship, every colony a potential fortress." The council members sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. "Doctor," said the representative, its colors shifting to deep purple with distress, "what does this mean for the council?" Doctor looked directly at each projection. "It means we've been living in an illusion of strength. For 3,000 years, we've maintained peace because we've only dealt with species like ourselves. Species that chose efficiency over preparation, elegance over redundancy, cooperation over competition." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Humans represent something different. They're a species that achieved interstellar civilization not by transcending their violent nature, but by perfecting it. They've turned warfare into a science and survival into an art form." Ambassador's image flickered as he leaned back in his chair. "Are you suggesting they're superior to us?" "I'm suggesting they're prepared in ways we've never considered," Doctor replied. "When Captain said their tactical computer could disable our ship in 37 seconds, she wasn't boasting. She was stating a calculated fact. Their computers automatically calculate how to fight everything they encounter." Delegate A's blue features had gone pale. "Doctor, what happens if they decide we're a threat?" Doctor was quiet for a long moment. "Then we discover that our 3,000 years of peace have made us weak. Our ships are designed for diplomatic missions and scientific research. Theirs are designed to fight and win against impossible odds." She activated one final display, showing the energy signatures from both human ships. "But here's the most troubling part. This isn't their fleet. This isn't their best technology. Captain called the Retribution their Battleship, which implies they have others. And Captain mentioned a colonial defense force, which suggests this is just one branch of their military." The silence stretched as the council members absorbed this information. Finally, Ambassador spoke. "Doctor, are you recommending we treat humans as a threat?" "I'm recommending we treat them with the respect due to a species that could end our civilization if they chose to," she replied. "But more than that, I'm recommending we face some uncomfortable truths about ourselves." She stood and walked to the center of the room. "For 3,000 years, we've told ourselves that our way is the only path to true civilization. That intelligence naturally leads to peace, and peace naturally leads to prosperity. We've looked down on warfare as primitive and brutal. But humans have shown us something we didn't want to acknowledge. They've achieved everything we have: space travel, advanced technology, organized society, while maintaining their capacity for violence. More than that, they've turned that capacity into a tool for survival and protection." Doctor looked at each council member. "We lament not because humans are aggressive. We lament because they've proven that our path isn't the only one. And worse, they've proven that our path may have made us vulnerable." Admiral's projection showed him rubbing his temples. "Doctor, what do we do with this information?" "We adapt," she said simply. "We acknowledge that the galaxy is bigger and more dangerous than we thought. We accept that our peaceful confederation exists not because we're morally superior, but because we've been fortunate enough to avoid species like humanity until now." She paused, then continued. "And we make a choice. We can try to integrate humanity into our confederation, knowing they will inevitably dominate through sheer military capability. Or we can treat them as a threat and discover what it's like to fight a species that has spent its entire existence preparing for war." The council members looked at each other through their holographic connections, each seeing the same realization in the other's faces. Ambassador finally broke the silence. "Doctor, prepare a full report for the council archives. Title it 'The Day We Learned We Weren't Alone in the Dark.'" As the holograms faded, Doctor remained in her laboratory, staring at the image of the Retribution. The ship hung in space like a monument to a completely different philosophy of existence. Where the Council had chosen to reach for the stars through cooperation and peace, humans had clawed their way up through preparation and strength. She began composing her final report, starting with words that would echo through Council archives for generations. "Today we encountered a species that achieved greatness not despite their capacity for violence, but because of their mastery of it. We sought to uplift a primitive civilization and instead discovered warriors who had uplifted themselves. We lament not their nature, but our own naivety. In the cold darkness of space, we chose to become gardeners. Humanity chose to become guardians. Time will tell which approach truly serves civilization better." Doctor looked one more time at the human battleship, then began planning for a